subscribers. Bali is hot and rain every day. My dogs cannot go for a walk, but we enjoy playing inside. Anyway, today's podcast, we picked up the latest journals from Indonesian parliament. Some topics are already making noise among our societies. If you are interested, please visit their website and read through original reports. Always stay safe.
Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're going through a whole stack of Indonesian parliamentary reports.
Oh, yeah.
And we're going to try to extract some fascinating stories and insights from them.
Yeah, always a lot of good stuff in these reports.
I know, it's always exciting to see what we're going to find.
Absolutely.
So to give you a little preview of where we're heading today, we're going to be looking at some of the challenges facing teachers in Indonesia.
Okay.
We're going to be talking about Indonesia's quest for SALT, self-sufficiency.
Wow.
And we're also going to be taking a look at increased scrutiny surrounding police use of firearms.
Interesting.
Quite a diverse range of topics.
Yeah, for sure.
But as we always find, these things are kind of more interconnected than they might seem at first glance.
Absolutely.
So let's jump right in and start with the education deep dive.
Okay.
Okay, so one of these reports actually features a case study about a teacher named Supriyani who faced legal action for disciplining a student. And this case kind of highlights how the concept of discipline has really evolved in Indonesian schools.
Yeah, it's definitely a different landscape now than it used to be.
So maybe you can give us a little bit of background on that.
Right. So, back in the day, physical punishment was pretty common in Indonesian schools.
Yeah.
But obviously there's been a shift away from that towards more humanistic approaches.
Yeah.
Which is good in theory, but it's created some challenges.
So it sounds like teachers are kind of caught in the middle of this transition.
Exactly.
You can imagine how parents might misinterpret certain disciplinary actions.
Yeah.
Especially now with the rise of social media.
Especially with social media.
Where, everything can be filmed and shared instantly.
Yeah, things can escalate so quickly.
So what are they doing to protect teachers who are, kind of vulnerable in this new environment?
Well, one of the big things they're focusing on is better training.
Okay.
Particularly in techniques like restorative justice.
Oh, yeah, I've heard about that.
It's all about repairing harm and building relationships rather than punishment.
So it's like a more holistic approach.
Exactly. Yeah, it's about getting to the root of the problem.
And getting everyone involved.
Absolutely. And that ties into another key strategy, which is improving communication.
Okay.
They're really emphasizing the importance of clear and open dialogue between teachers, parents, and even students.
So it's about preventing those misunderstandings before they even have a chance to arise.
Exactly.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And then there's the legal side of things.
Okay.
The Ministry of Education and Culture actually put out a regulation back in 2017. It's Permendik Bud No. 10, and it's specifically designed to protect educators from violence and intimidation.
Wow, so they're taking it seriously.
Yeah, they're recognizing that teachers need to feel safe to do their jobs.
That's good.
But what about when things do go wrong?
Yeah, what kind of support do teachers have if they face legal challenges?
Well, the reports suggest that paralegals could play a crucial role here, especially in areas where access to legal services is limited.
Yeah, that makes sense.
They can provide that initial advice and support.
Yeah.
Which can be invaluable for a teacher who's facing a legal battle.
Okay, so we've got better training, clearer communication, legal protection, and paralegal support. It sounds like they're really trying to create a more supportive environment for teachers.
It's a multifaceted approach, for sure.
Okay, so let's move on from the classroom to the coastline now.
All right.
Because Indonesia is on a mission to become SALT, self-sufficient.
Interesting.
Which sounds a little strange when you think about it.
Yeah, it is a bit of a head-scratcher.
It's an archipelago nation with thousands of islands.
You'd think they'd have salt coming out of their ears.
You would think, right.
But the reality is they're importing a lot more salt than they're producing.
So what's the government's goal here?
Well, their aim is to completely stop importing consumer salt by 2025.
Wow, that's ambitious.
It is, and then by 2027, they want to be self-sufficient in industrial salt as well.
Okay, so what are the numbers looking like right now?
So between 2019 and 2023, Indonesia imported an average of 2.72 million tons of salt every year, while domestic production only averaged 1.64 million tons.
Okay, so yeah, there's a pretty significant gap there.
Yeah, there's a lot of ground to make up.
So what's preventing Indonesia from producing enough salt?
Well, believe it or not, one of the biggest challenges is the weather.
Really?
The La Nina phenomenon, which brings increased rainfall, has been wreaking havoc on salt production.
Oh, wow. So even salt production is being affected by climate change.
Yeah, it just goes to show how these issues are all interconnected.
So climate change is one factor, but what else is going on?
Well, a lot of Indonesian salt farmers are still using traditional non-mechanized production methods.
Oh, so they're kind of behind in terms of technology.
Yeah, and that impacts both the quantity and the quality of the salt they produce.
And then, of course, there's the issue of land,
Right.
with shrinking salt pan areas.
Limited land is definitely a constraint.
And finally, there's the human factor. A lot of these salt farmers lack the technical expertise and the financial resources to modernize their operations.
It's a combination of factors that are holding them back.
So it sounds like they're facing an uphill battle,
It's not going to be easy, that's for sure.
but I'm sure they've got some strategies up their sleeve.
Oh yeah, they're not giving up without a fight.
So let's hear it. What are they doing to try and turn things around?
Well, one of the key strategies is bringing in advanced technology,
Okay.
like geomembranes, which can help to improve production and make them less vulnerable to those weather fluctuations.
It's like giving the salt farms a technological makeover.
Exactly, and they're not just throwing tech at the problem, they're also investing in capacity building.
Okay.
So they're providing training to salt farmers on these new techniques.
That's good. So it's not just about the technology itself.
Right, it's about empowering the people who are using it.
Okay.
And they're even looking at how the Internet of Things can be used to manage salt pans more efficiently.
Wow. So they're really going all in on the tech.
Yeah, they're embracing innovation.
And of course, none of this is going to be cheap.
Right, money talks.
So what about the financial side of things?
Well, the government has actually launched a program called Tugar, which provides financial assistance to salt farmers.
Okay. So they're putting your money where their mouth is?
They are, and they're also looking at ways to improve market access for locally produced salt.
That makes sense.
Whether it's through government procurement programs or incentives for industries to buy local.
Because you can have all the salt in the world, but if nobody's buying it.
Exactly, supply and demand, right?
Exactly.
And finally, they're encouraging salt farmers to organize themselves into cooperatives called Kugar.
And what's the benefit of that?
Well, it gives them more bargaining power and better access to resources.
So it's like you're creating this whole support system for salt farmers.
Exactly. It's a holistic approach.
Wow. Okay. So it sounds like they're really throwing everything they've got at this salt self-sufficiency goal.
Yeah, they're determined to make it happen.
Okay, well, let's move on from salt now and brace ourselves for a topic that's generating some serious controversy in Indonesia.
Oh, boy.
The use of firearms by law enforcement.
Yeah, this is a sensitive one.
We're starting with a tragic story. A student in Semarang was fatally shot by a police officer during a student brawl.
Oh, wow.
And this incident sparked outrage and prompted a parliamentary inquiry.
That's understandable. It's a terrible tragedy.
And it's not an isolated incident.
Right. There have been other cases that have raised concerns.
Like what?
Well, there was the case of a police officer shooting his colleague in Sulawesi Selatan, and another case in Bangka Belitung where a citizen accused of stealing palm fruit was shot.
Okay, so clearly something's not right here.
Yeah, these incidents are raising serious questions.
So let's talk about the regulations.
Okay.
What kind of rules govern the use of firearms by police in Indonesia?
Well, there are actually multiple regulations that come into play. There's PERCAP number 1 of 2009, which deals with the use of force in police action. Then there's PERCAP number 8 of 2009, which outlines human rights principles. And more recently, there's PERCAP number 1 of 2022, which focuses on firearm licensing and control. And let's not forget PERCAP number 10 of 2021, which outlines procedures for psychological testing for firearm users.
Okay, so it's not like there's a complete absence of rules.
No, the regulations exist.
But the fact that these incidents are still happening suggests there might be some problems with implementation.
Yeah, and that's what organizations like YLBHI and Amnesty International Indonesia are arguing.
What are you saying?
They're saying that while the regulations look good on paper, the reality on the ground is often quite different.
Okay, so there's a gap between the theory and the practice.
Exactly.
And when things go wrong, there's a lack of accountability.
That's a major concern.
So what needs to change?
Well, there are calls for a multi-pronged approach.
Okay.
Some are pushing for stricter laws.
Like what?
Well, maybe limiting the use of lethal firearms to only those officers in high-risk situations.
Okay, so reducing the potential for misuse.
Exactly. But it's not just about the laws themselves, it's also about the culture within the police force.
Yeah.
There's a need for better training to enhance professionalism and to foster a more humane and community-oriented approach to policing.
So it's about changing the mindset.
Exactly. And of course, there's the issue of oversight.
Right.
The parliament, the DPRRI, is playing a more active role in pushing for accountability.
Okay.
They're evaluating firearm regulations and advocating for things like body cameras.
So it's about increasing transparency and making sure there's proper scrutiny.
Exactly.
Okay, so this is obviously a very complex issue with no easy answers.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
But the fact that these conversations are happening is a good sign.
It shows that people are taking this seriously.
And that they're committed to finding solutions that protect both the public and the police.
Exactly. It's all about finding that balance.
Okay, well, we've covered teachers and SALT and firearms.
Quite a range of topics.
And we're just getting started.
We've got plenty more to dive into.
Speaking of which, I'm seeing something here about voter turnout. Or rather, the lack thereof.
Oh, yeah. What's that about?
Apparently, the latest regional elections saw record low numbers of people heading to the polls.
That's interesting.
So what's going on there?
Well, it seems like voter fatigue might be setting in.
Voter fatigue.
Yeah, you see, the regional elections known as the Pilkada, they came hot on the heels of the presidential and legislative elections.
Oh, so people are just tired of voting.
Yeah, it's like election overload.
I can understand that.
And the reports also point to a disconnect between the candidates and the voters. Some people felt like the candidates didn't really represent their interests or understand their needs.
So they felt like their voices weren't being heard.
Exactly. And, you also had those practical issues that always come up.
Like what?
Bad weather, transportation problems, polling stations that are hard to get to, especially in more remote areas.
Yeah, so access to voting isn't equal for everyone.
That's right.
And when you combine all those factors, voter fatigue, uninspiring candidates, logistical hurdles, it's no wonder that turnout took a hit.
Yeah, it's a recipe for apathy.
But low voter turnout isn't just a numbers game.
Right.
It has real consequences for democracy.
It undermines the legitimacy of the elected officials and raises questions about how representative they truly are.
Yeah, it can create a sense of disillusionment and distrust.
Exactly.
So what are they proposing to do about it?
Well, the report calls for a major evaluation of the electoral process.
Okay.
They want to figure out what went wrong and how to prevent it from happening again.
So it's like hitting the reset button.
Exactly. And they're also suggesting they need to do a better job of educating voters.
Okay.
Not just about how to vote, but why it matters.
It's about reminding people that their voices do have power.
Yeah, that their vote counts.
And they're also proposing some structural changes.
Right.
Like maybe reconsidering having the presidential, legislative, and regional elections all crammed into the same year.
Yeah, spreading those elections out might help with the voter fatigue issue.
Makes sense.
And finally, the report urges the parliament, the DPRI, to step up and take a more active role in addressing these issues.
So it's about ensuring that democracy in Indonesia stays healthy and vibrant.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've covered education, the SALT shortage, police use of firearms, and now this dip in voter turnout.
It's amazing how these reports give us such a window into Indonesian society.
I know, it's fascinating.
And speaking of inner workings, let's shift gears and zoom in on the Indonesian economy, specifically the manufacturing sector.
All right.
There's a report here that's raising some red flags about a key economic indicator called the Purchasing Managers Index.
Okay, and for those of us who aren't economists, what is the Purchasing Managers Index?
It's often called the PMI for short.
PMI, okay.
And you can think of it as a kind of health check for the manufacturing industry. It's based on surveys of purchasing managers, who are basically the folks responsible for buying all the materials and supplies that factories need to make their products.
So they're the ones who really know what's going on.
Yeah, they have their finger on the pulse of the industry.
And how does this PMI work?
Well, it boils down all those insights into a single number. Anything above 50 means the manufacturing sector is expanding,
Okay,
while anything below 50 signals contraction.
got it. So what's the news from Indonesia?
Well, brace yourself. The PMI has been contracting for 5 months straight.
Oh, no.
And to make matters worse, this is happening while many other Southeast Asian countries are seeing their manufacturing sectors grow.
So they're falling behind their neighbors.
It's not a good sign.
So what's dragging down Indonesia's manufacturing sector?
Well, the first culprit is a flood of cheap imports.
Oh, imports again.
Yeah, it seems like Indonesian consumers are opting for those imported goods, which are often cheaper.
And that's hurting domestic manufacturers.
It's putting pressure on them to cut costs, reduce production, and even lay off workers.
And I'm guessing this import issue is tied to trade policies.
It's definitely a factor.
Is Indonesia doing enough to protect its domestic industries?
Well, the report actually points out that Indonesia has significantly fewer trade measures in place compared to other countries, especially its neighbors in Southeast Asia.
So their manufacturing sector is more exposed.
Yeah, they're more vulnerable to competition from imports.
And it's not just imports that are hurting Indonesian manufacturers.
Right.
The global economic slowdown is also having an impact.
Yeah, all those economic jitters in the US and China are having ripple effects everywhere.
And that's affecting demand for Indonesian exports.
Exactly.
So they're getting squeezed from both sides.
Imports flooding the domestic market and weakening demand for their exports.
That's a tough spot to be in.
It is. And then, of course, there's the issue of inflation,
Right.
which is pushing up the cost of raw materials and other inputs for manufacturers.
So their costs are going up while their revenues are going down.
It's not a good combination.
And to make matters worse, the Indonesian rupiah has been weakening against other currencies.
Yeah, making those imported inputs even more expensive.
So it's a real uphill battle for Indonesian manufacturers.
It's a challenging environment for sure.
But surely they've got some ideas about how to turn things around.
Oh, yeah, they've got some recommendations.
Lay it on us. What are they suggesting?
Well, they're calling for some serious government intervention.
Okay.
They're urging the Ministry of Industry to implement policies that support domestic production, encourage investment in innovation and technology, and provide more support to small and medium-sized enterprises.
So it's about creating a more supportive environment for Indonesian manufacturers.
Exactly. And they're also suggesting a complete overhaul of Indonesia's trade policies to find ways to protect local businesses without shutting themselves off from the global economy entirely.
That's a tough balancing act.
It is, but it's necessary.
And they're also calling on the parliament, the DPR, to get more involved in overseeing all of this.
Right, to make sure that the government is taking action and that those policies are having a real impact.
So it's about accountability.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about teachers feeling the heat, the quest for self-sufficiency, the controversies around police use of firearms, the dip in voter turnout, and now this rather bleak outlook for Indonesian manufacturing.
That's quite a lot to digest.
I know it's a lot,
Yeah.
but these reports aren't just about highlighting problems.
Right.
They're also about prompting discussion and finding solutions.
And they give us this incredible glimpse into what's really going on in Indonesia.
Yeah, it's like a crash course in Indonesian current events.
Exactly. And what strikes me is how many of these issues, despite seeming very specific to Indonesia, are actually reflections of broader global trends.
Yeah, we're seeing similar debates about the role of technology,
Mm.
the impact of globalization, the challenges of maintaining a healthy democracy all over the world,
It's a reminder that we're all interconnected.
that the choices we make, the policies we support, the actions we take, they have ripple effects that extend far beyond our own borders. So it's not just about Indonesia, it's about the world we're creating together.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've still got a stack of reports here.
Okay.
And one that's caught my eye is about artificial intelligence, or AI, in education.
AI. That's a hot topic.
I'm both excited and a little terrified by the possibilities.
I know what you mean.
I mean, imagine a world where every student has access to a personalized AI tutor
Wow.
that can adapt to their learning style and pace.
It's like having a 247 learning companion.
It sounds incredible, but I can also see the potential downsides.
Yeah, there are definitely risks to consider.
What about the risk of over-reliance on technology? What about those crucial human connections that are so essential to learning?
Those are valid concerns.
So these reports delve into both the promises and the perils of AI in education.
Yeah, they explore both sides of the coin.
Okay, so let's dive in and see what these experts have to say about this brave new world of AI-powered learning.
Let's do it. Yeah, so we've got reports here talking about AI tutors and personalized learning and even AI grading essays.
Wow, it sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie.
I know, right?
So is this stuff actually happening in classrooms, or is it all just futuristic fantasy?
It's a bit of both, actually.
Right.
Some of this AI-powered tech is already being used in schools, while other aspects are still in the experimental phase.
Okay.
But what's clear from these reports is that the pace of development is lightning fast.
Yeah, it seems like things are changing so quickly these days.
I know what you mean. What seems like science fiction today could be commonplace in schools tomorrow.
Okay, so let's talk about the potential upsides.
Okay.
What are the ways that AI could actually make education better for students?
Well, one of the most exciting things is the potential for personalized learning.
Personalized learning.
Yeah, imagine a system that can analyze a student's strengths and weaknesses and learning style, and then create a customized learning path just for them.
It's like having a tailor-made education.
Exactly. And AI tutors can provide that one-on-one support that many students need, but often can't get in a crowded classroom.
Yeah, that makes sense.
These AI tutors can answer questions, provide feedback, and adjust the difficulty of the material in real time. based on how the student is progressing.
Wow, that sounds pretty amazing.
It is, especially for students who struggle in traditional classroom settings or who need to move at a faster pace.
Okay, so what about the teachers?
Well, think about the potential for AI to take over some of the more mundane tasks, like grading assignments.
Oh yeah, that would be a huge time saver.
Exactly. This would free up teachers to spend more time doing what they do best, interacting with students, providing guidance and mentorship, fostering creativity and critical thinking.
So it's not about replacing teachers, it's about giving them superpowers.
Exactly. AI can handle the routine stuff, allowing teachers to focus on those uniquely human aspects of teaching that no algorithm can replicate.
Okay, I'm starting to see the appeal of AI in education.
It's definitely got a lot of potential.
But let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Okay.
What about the potential downsides?
Right. There are definitely risks to consider.
Like what?
Well, one of the biggest concerns is bias. Yeah, AI systems are trained on data. And if that data reflects existing biases in society, like gender bias, racial bias, socioeconomic bias, those biases can get baked into the AI.
Oh, that's a scary thought.
It is. We wouldn't want an AI system giving some students an advantage over others just because of their background or demographics.
That'd be totally unfair.
Exactly, and this is where the human element is so crucial.
Okay.
We need educators and developers working together to make sure these AI systems are fair and equitable and accessible to all students.
So it's not just about the technology itself, it's about how we use it.
Exactly. It requires constant vigilance and ethical oversight.
It's like we need to be the ethical guardians of AI,
I like that phrase.
making sure it doesn't perpetuate or even amplify existing inequalities.
Absolutely. And another big concern is over-reliance on technology.
Yeah.
It's easy to get swept up in the excitement of AI and think it's going to solve all our problems.
Yeah, it's not a magic wand.
Yeah. Exactly. We need to be thoughtful and intentional about how we integrate AI into education, making sure it complements and enhances human interaction, not replaces it.
The goal should be to create a balanced learning environment.
Absolutely.
Where technology empowers both teachers and students, but doesn't become a crutch.
I agree.
And these reports also raise some really interesting questions about the future of work.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
If AI is going to be doing more and more of the thinking tasks, what kind of skills will students need to thrive in this new world?
It's a challenge. We've always talked about education preparing students for the jobs of the future.
Right.
But what happens when the jobs of the future are constantly evolving thanks to AI?
Yeah, it's like trying to hit a moving target.
Exactly. These reports suggest that we need to shift the focus from rote memorization and technical skills to things like critical thinking, problem solving, creativity, collaboration, and adaptability.
So those are the skills that are going to be in high demand.
Yeah, even as AI becomes more sophisticated.
Those are the uniquely human skills that can't be automated.
Exactly. It's not just about what we teach, it's about how we teach. We need to cultivate those skills that make us truly human.
Okay, so we've explored the challenges facing Indonesian teachers. We dove deep into the country's quest for self-sufficiency. We uncovered the debates surrounding police use of firearms and voter participation. We examined the headwinds facing the manufacturing sector. And now we've even peeked into the future of learning in an AI-driven world.
Wow, what a journey.
It's amazing how these reports give us this window into Indonesian society and even spark global conversations.
They really do. It's fascinating to see how these seemingly local issues connect to broader trends.
And what strikes me is the sense of urgency and the willingness to tackle these complex issues head-on.
Yeah, they're not shying away from the tough questions.
Whether it's climate change impacting salt production or the ethical dilemmas of AI in education, these reports show a determination to find solutions and build a better future.
It's inspiring, and it's a reminder that we all have a role to play in shaping that future.
Exactly. Whether it's staying informed, engaging in our communities, advocating for change, or simply having thoughtful conversations about the world we want to create, we can all make a difference.
Well said, and that's what these deep dives are all about.
Sparking curiosity, encouraging critical thinking, and empowering us all to become more engaged and informed citizens.
Absolutely. So until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.
Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.
Yeah, it's really fascinating to see how these themes are playing out in Indonesia.
It is. And you know what else I find interesting is how these reports often highlight potential solutions.
Oh, yeah, they don't just dwell on the problems.
Right. It's like they're trying to spark a conversation about how to move forward.
Exactly, and that's so important.
Because these are complex issues with no easy answers.
Absolutely. It's going to take a collective effort to address these challenges.
And that's where I think these reports can be really valuable. They bring these issues to light. They get people thinking and talking.
Yeah, they're a catalyst for change.
Exactly. And that's ultimately what we need if we want to create a better future.
A better future for Indonesia and for the world.
Right. Because as we've seen, these issues are not just confined to Indonesia.
Absolutely. They're global in scope.
They're interconnected, and they affect us all.
So it's up to all of us to find solutions.
To work together to build a more just and sustainable world.
Well said.
Well, I think that's a great note to end on. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Indonesian parliamentary reports.
It's been a pleasure.
I always learn so much from these conversations.
And I hope our listeners do too.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.
See you next time.
Bye, everyone!